When this fisherman spotted something strange on the rocky shoreline, he never imagined it would cause such a scene. Half buried in the pebbles was a massive rusted chain snaking straight into the ocean. Curiosity got the better of him, so he anchored his boat and went to investigate. But the moment he began to tug on it, the locals watching nearby started shouting, begging him to stop before it was too late. But before we start, smash the like button, subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so you never miss any of our upcoming stories. Captain Luke had spent most of his working life chasing schools of fish across the rugged, unpredictable ocean. But on this particular morning, he stumbled upon something that might end up being the greatest catch of his career. He spent those early hours checking his equipment, tightening ropes, and preparing for another long day while his small boat rocked gently along the coastline's edge. For Luke, mornings were a time of calm before the work began. He tied knots, adjusted nets, and glanced at the shoreline as waves lapped against his boat. About 50 minutes into this routine, something caught his eye. At first, he thought it was another odd patch of stones. "What the hell is that?" he muttered, staring toward a black-streaked section of beach. What Luke saw wasn't driftwood or the usual mess of rope or seaweed. The object looked metallic, thick, and rusted, its surface dull in the morning light. The shape was unmistakable, interlocking links larger than his forearm. A massive chain lay on the rocky beach, its other end disappearing beneath the ocean. Curiosity driving him, Luke anchored his boat nearby and climbed out to investigate. The chain stretched from the water's edge into the shallow surf before disappearing beneath waves. Luke crouched close, his boots sinking into wet sand scattered with dark pebbles. In all his years at sea as a shipping captain, he had never come across anything like this. Yet even with the strangeness of the sight, things were about to become far more unusual still. Luke extended his gloved hand, resting his fingers on the pitted iron. The links looked ancient, eaten by decades, maybe centuries of salt water, yet remained solid under his touch. Curiosity flared, stronger than caution. Whatever lay attached had to be massive, given the link's size. Testing his strength, Luke tightened his grip and gave the heavy chain an experimental tug. The chain responded instantly to his pull, scraping against the stones with a noise. It shifted more easily than he had expected, the links dragging several inches and sending ripples outward into the deeper water. That movement told Luke something important. The object attached to it was still there, much farther out into the ocean than he would have guessed. Luke's brows knitted in concentration. If the ocean hadn't completely swallowed this thing, perhaps he could drag some of it closer. That thought made him act. Planting his boots against a cluster of rocks, he leaned his weight backward, bracing for another pull. The seasoned fisherman knew how to use his strength, and this time he planned to pull with everything he had. The chain clattered noisily, groaning as more rusted links revealed themselves from beneath the water. Luke's breaths came heavier as the sea spray coated his jacket. He pushed himself harder, giving every ounce of strength. Each emerging link only deepened the mystery. What kind of vessel, what kind of anchor could possibly require something this huge? The sheer scale of it was baffling. For a moment, Luke's imagination wandered. Perhaps the chain belonged to a centuries-old shipwreck, one of the galleons whispered about in harbor tavern. He pictured treasure sealed beneath sand. It was foolish. No lone fisherman could haul a ship up by hand. Still, the thought lingered, feeding his curiosity. Something was down there, and he was desperate to learn what it was. That restless thought drove him to tug harder, muscles straining. Behind him, the town beyond the dunes slowly came to life. He remained unaware, his mind consumed by the chain. Yet it was the stirring of those townsfolk that sparked the unusual events to follow. Luke remained intent on the chain until movement on the ridge caught his attention. A voice shouted faintly over the crashing surf, carried by the wind. He turned just enough to see figures standing high on the dunes, arms waving frantically. Their urgency pulled him out of his concentration. In seconds, the group was running, sliding down the slope toward him. The shouts grew louder, sharper, carried by the wind. "Leave it! Don't touch that chain!" one man yelled, desperation roughening his voice. Luke glanced back in surprise as the group charged down, boots and bare feet pounding against the sand in unison. His grip on the iron didn't loosen. Confusion spread across his face, caught between instinctive defiance and their panicked warning. Within seconds, the locals surrounded him, their voices colliding with the roar of waves. Hands pulled at his shoulders, dragging him back from the chain. Their faces carried wide-eyed urgency. "Don't touch it," one man said firmly. "We've left that alone for years." Luke glanced down at the rusted links. "It's just a chain," he insisted, unable to understand their reaction. An older man stepped forward. His voice dropped low. "Villagers have tried before to find where that chain leads. None came back. Not one." His expression hardened. "In the last few years alone, since this chain appeared to the shore, over 10 people went chasing its source. Every single one disappeared into the ocean. But each time someone set out from this beach, they never returned. It was as if the sea swallowed them whole," the man continued. His words hung in the salty air like heavy fog. For the first time since finding the chain, Luke felt a flicker of fear. Could that truly be possible, or was it just folklore? The villagers explained the chain had become a fixture, something everyone knew but avoided. Still, in coastal bars, whispers spread. Sailors spoke of it like a curse, something you didn't mention loudly. They called it bad luck, warning that whoever touched it would vanish like the others. Luke gave a small laugh, though his tone carried an edge of respect. Sounds like superstition. Metal doesn't drag men into the deep. Storms, bad judgment, those are the dangers. His words were rational, but curiosity burned hotter than caution. He wasn't the type to walk away. Whatever secrets the chain held, he wanted to uncover them. Leaving without answers wasn't in his nature. "I'm going to find out where it goes," Luke said firmly. "My boat has sonar. We can follow it under the water, see exactly what it's tied to." His voice carried conviction, but the villagers exchanged uneasy glances. None looked interested in joining him. To them, the chain was cursed. Their silence spoke louder than refusal. Luke stood alone in determination. One by one, the group began to leave. Some muttered curses, others shook their heads in frustration. "You'll be next," one man warned before trudging back up the dunes. Within minutes, the group had scattered, leaving Luke with nothing but the surf and the rusted links stretching endlessly into the sea. He sighed, disappointed but determined. Just as Luke turned toward his boat, a voice called out. "I'll join you," it said clearly. Luke turned to find a tall, lean man with wind-tossed hair and an intense expression. "Name's Edwin," he said simply. "My father went searching for the end of that chain last year. He never came back. I've wanted to try, but not alone." Luke blinked, taken aback. "Your father? That's terrible," he said quietly. Edwin's gaze stayed locked on the water, jaw tight. The last anyone saw him, he was heading out to find the chain's source. "People told me to move on, to accept he's gone, but I can't. If there's even the smallest chance of answers, I have to try." Luke considered the weight behind Edwin's words. This wasn't just curiosity, it was personal, anchored in grief. Luke felt respect for the young man's determination. He stepped forward, placing a firm hand on Edwin's shoulder. "All right," he said simply, "we'll look together. Whatever's out there, we'll find it." Edwin gave a brief nod, one that carried more strength than any long speech. Together, they boarded Luke's boat, the wooden deck creaking beneath their boot. Overhead, clouds thickened, dimming the gray morning light as if the sky sensed what they were about to face. Luke powered on the sonar, its steady hum filling the air. The screen flickered alive, ready to trace the chain's submerged path. As the engine rumbled, Edwin muttered, "Let's bring this to an end." Luke steered the boat carefully, keeping it steady as the sonar tracked the chain's path. On the display, the line stretched endlessly forward. The further they went, the more astonishing it became. Already they had traveled miles offshore, and still, the chain continued. 10 miles in, the end remained unseen. Luke glanced at Edwin, and in silence they both shared the same unsettling thought. The sonar screen displayed the chain in a continuous line, no gaps appearing. Luke leaned close, studying it. "Longest stretch of metal I've ever seen," he muttered. Edwin nodded silently, eyes fixed on the glowing display. Each mile carried them further into the unknown, the mystery tightening around them. No matter how far they traveled, nothing hinted at an end, but both knew it couldn't last. Finally, the signal shifted. The chain's steady line ended at a single dot on the sonar screen. Luke eased the throttle, letting the boat drift. Both men stared at the display. "Is this it? The end?" Edwin asked. Luke frowned. He expected to see some massive vessel anchored there, but the sonar revealed nothing attached at all. It just stopped. It was as though the chain simply vanished into nothingness. Luke stared, baffled. For such a massive object to end abruptly, with nothing visible, was confusing. Yet deep down, he knew this wasn't the end of their journey. Something important was hidden beneath them, something that could explain everything, maybe even what had happened to Edwin's father. "We have to go down," Edwin said firmly, leaving no room for hesitation. Luke studied him carefully. "Do you even know how to dive?" he asked. But before he could finish, Edwin was already pulling on the black wetsuit hanging in the cabin. His movements carried, practiced ease. He moved like a man who had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. "I've been diving for 14 years, Edwin said confidently. The determination in his voice reassured Luke more than any explanation. Without further words, Luke pulled his own gear from storage. Oxygen tanks, flippers, and waterproof lights clattered onto the deck as they prepared. Each motion was deliberate, practiced, and quick. They were two men about to face the ocean's deepest secret. Luke and Edwin stood shoulder to shoulder at the edge of the boat, the sea stretching endlessly before them. Luke tugged at his straps, checking every buckle twice. The weight pressed heavily against his back, a reminder of what they were about to do. "Ready?" he asked. Edwin gave a simple nod, determination written in his eye. Without hesitation, the two men tipped forward, breaking the surface with barely a splash. Cold waves rushed instantly, sharp against their skin. For a moment, the world turned to bubbles and muffled sound. They steadied themselves, adjusting masks and regulators, then flicked on their lights. Narrow beams pierced the shifting blue, creating fragile tunnels of brightness in a sea that seemed endless. They angled downward, following the long chain into the depths. The further they swam, the darker it became, the fading light above shrinking to a memory. Greens dulled into gray shadows, and soon only their flashlights painted faint colors. Luke glanced at his pressure gauge, the steady drop reminding him of how deep they had already come and how much remained. The chain itself was massive, thick rusted links stretching down without end, heavy as if anchored far beyond sight. Luke's eyes followed it carefully into the gloom. The shadows thickened, pressing closer as they swam. Both men stayed quiet, their movements slow and measured. Every kick carried them further into the unknown, deeper into the water, where mystery and danger waited. To Luke's surprise, he realized the sonar readings had been misleading. Instead of lying across the seabed as expected, the chain plunged into the earth itself. Luke hovered, staring at it. The opening looked almost unnatural, as though the ocean floor had been torn apart. The sight filled him with an unsettled, eerie feeling. He shone his light across the jagged edges of the crevice, watching how the links vanished into blackness. It was as if the seabed had opened deliberately, swallowing the chain whole. A chill ran through him that had nothing to do with the water. The deeper the chain went, the stranger it became. He wondered silently what could possibly lie at the other end. Luke hesitated, hovering above the ominous gap. This could be dangerous, he thought, torn between curiosity and caution. For a moment, he regretted convincing Edwin to join him. Still, before Luke could suggest turning back, Edwin shifted his light and moved toward the jagged mouth. His determination was undeniable. Steady and unwavering, Edwin propelled himself forward, the glow of his flashlight slicing through the darkness. His fins carried him closer until, without hesitation, he slipped inside. Luke's pulse quickened, guilt and fear rising, yet Edwin's movements showed intent. Hovering for just a second more, Luke braced himself. He knew he had no choice but to follow into the shadows. Edwin disappeared into the crevice, and Luke followed, his breath loud in his ears as darkness swallowed them. The narrow passage pressed tightly on both sides, forcing slow, careful movements while the rusted chain guided their way. As they went deeper, unease grew. The tunnel seemed endless, leading to something far more dangerous than they expected. Luke's light caught a gap in the cliff wall where the chain vanished into a hidden cave. With a shared look, they pushed forward, unwilling to turn back. Inside, the tunnel angled upward, and before long, a glimmer appeared above a surface of trapped air. They kicked hard and broke through, gasping in shock at what they saw. A massive air-filled dome deep beneath the ocean floor. Pulling themselves onto solid rock, they realized they were standing in a hidden cavern no one had ever seen. Stalactites dripped from the ceiling, and the air was cool but breathable. Removing their masks, they stood in silent awe, surrounded by shells and stone, a secret world buried under the sea. Edwin's flashlight sliced through the darkness, the beam tracing the rusted chain deeper into the vast cavern. The air grew heavy as they advanced, each echo magnified by dripping water. Then, their light struck something immense, a ship, impossibly preserved beneath the ocean floor. Its hull loomed out of the shadows, the chain vanishing into its side. Luke stared in disbelief. "This looks centuries old," he murmured. Before they could approach, faint noises echoed from beyond the wreck. From the darkness, a group of 10 men appeared, pale, thin, and trembling. Edwin froze as one man stumbled forward, recognition flooding his face. "Dad?" he whispered. The two embraced, the moment raw and unreal. Edwin's father, voice hoarse, explained they had followed the same chain years ago and found themselves trapped in the air pocket. For 2 years, they had survived in secret, waiting for rescue. The realization hit Luke hard. The chain had not only revealed a hidden ship but also led them to the lost. The revelation hit hard. 2 years of survival in that suffocating cavern seemed unimaginable. Yet 10 gaunt men stood as proof. Edwin's father explained how they dove for fish and rationed air, never expecting rescue, let alone from his own son. Overwhelmed, Edwin clung to him while Luke quickly shifted to survival mode. Getting out would be harder than getting in. With only 2 air tanks, Luke devised a desperate plan. Share air and use a buoyant beam from the ship to rise faster. The men clung to it as they ascended through the dark waters, lungs burning, trading the regulator in tense rhythm. Just when strength faltered, a shimmer of light broke above daylight. They surfaced gasping, dragging themselves onto the boat, alive against all odds. By nightfall, rescuers swarmed the shore. Medics worked, tears and laughter filled the air as families reunited. Weeks later, news confirmed the truth. The cavern held a lost Spanish treasure ship from 1612, sealed for centuries. Reading the headline, Luke smiled faintly. The real treasure wasn't gold, it was the men they brought back, and a story no one would ever forget. Thank you for watching. If you like this story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscription, and ring the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming story.